Hello, my name is Margaret Graziano, and I'm here to read you today a chapter out of Ignite Culture. This chapter is about growing up your childhood brain. The actual title of the chapter is Time for a Hard Look in the Mirror. Tom was a talented quality engineer. He came to me perplexed. He had many strong leadership qualities and couldn't understand why he was completely despised by almost everyone at his company. And it wasn't a secret. He knew it. He felt it. In his mind, he was doing a job well if he spent the day telling people what they were doing wrong so they could fix it and produce a higher quality product. He was a quality engineer. He was proud of the work he was doing. However, others saw Tom's behavior completely differently. They described him as negative, pompous, and arrogant. They avoided him and poked fun at him behind his back. He couldn't seem to make headway with anyone. I remember distinctly the day I walked through the plant with him. People actually turned away from him. Through our year and a half together, Tom began to realize he could only see what was broken when he spoke to people. His line of sight, his context was, let's say, filtered with a filter that was for what's wrong. And he couldn't see anything but that. Tom's approach to people, his context, his line of sight was a blind spot for him. He couldn't see it, and he couldn't even see that he couldn't see it, which is why it was a blind spot. Through our work together, specifically in the first 6 months, he started with becoming more and more self-aware, internally and externally, learning more about how he was showing up at work and how he was showing up at home. I remember him telling me after I gave him his IMX debrief that his wife had told him all of those things before, but he only heard it from her as criticism. But then after I gave him the debrief on the assessment, he interviewed people that he worked with, and they said the same thing. You're caustic, man. I don't want to work with you. I feel like I'm always going to be called out on my mistakes. Tom didn't realize that he was being defensive aggressive, but he was. And around him, he was creating people to be passive defensive. Tom began getting really curious. He began collecting sound and current data on how he shows up to people. He also did some deep, intensive coaching with me on his purpose, which turned out to be an inspiring man of integrity. Now, I'll read you back from the book. Within 6 months of finishing our year-and-a-half engagement, Tom was promoted to plant manager. 2 years later, he was promoted again, this time to director of operations for 5 plants. When he communicates with others now, Tom finds out what matters to the people that he's communicating. He finds out what they're invested in and what's important to them in the process of improvement. Then he communicates to them through that lens. During Tom's leadership tenure, profitability went up 8 points. Net profits nearly tripled. The company went from being weeks away from ousting their new general manager to widespread collaboration across teams and operations. The leadership team, for the first time in the company history, started working as a high-performance team. You can read more about it on page 21. Tom is a great example of somebody who took responsibility for his impact at work. And he moved from creating an environment around him of friction to an environment around him of flow. But it took not only self-awareness, but it took rigor and discipline for him to have agency over his own responses and filter and projections and reflections. And he learned that he could have choice, which is what I say when I say responsibility, conscious choice in how you show up. Tom is thriving in his career today, and his calling is to be an inspired man of integrity. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends. We've got many, 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 many resources. Take advantage of them. They're here so you can have the experience of having freedom and power and joy in a world that's filled with VUCA.